So the internet is getting filled with a whole bunch of AI generated content. And we're going to have to face this reality because it's already well underway. So we're going to need to adapt to this new internet and figure out a way for the things that we create to be found just to connect with other human beings in the first place. And if you're a creator or some kind of entrepreneur, a good way to find connection is maybe with your flaws. Your personality, not that that's a flaw, but your personality and the way you think and your logic, if it's impressive or kind of weird, your funny laugh, the way you say things, whatever the things are that you find joy in, all of these things, whatever they are, they make you human. Now, if you are one of these entrepreneurs or educators creating content online, you've probably seen how marketing is changing so much so quick. And one of the new things that a lot of marketers are using are AI avatars that look surprisingly, scarily human. And these avatars are used because of the money that they save. You can put them online around the clock to sell your thing. They look and they sound like really polished and perfect or trendy, and they never have bad hair. And the metrics behind some of these virtual influencers are pretty impressive, it seems, when you look at it. I don't know if that's real too. Like, what is real anymore? It's a pretty compelling idea if you're in marketing and you're using something that can be efficient and effective. You can just prompt whatever you want it to do, and you can automate things to save time in addition to this money saving. But for those of us who believe in the power of personal storytelling and genuine experiences, you might be asking yourself, I'm asking myself, like, what are some of the hidden costs here of this perfection, this glossy look? What's going to happen? That too. So in this episode, I'm going to get into the psychology of trust in the age of AI. I will show you why our brains get kind of weirded out by the things that are almost human, and this concept that you very well might have heard, Uncanny Valley. I'm going to compare and contrast the Uncanny Valley with another idea from psychology called the Pratfall Effect. And that explains why a person who's competent can actually make a mistake and be more likable somehow. If you're lucky, it'll work for you. But then I'll talk about what happens when we mix those things together, Uncanny Valley and the Pratfall Effect. You're listening to The Human Internet Theory, and I'm your human host, Jen DeHaan. I started out in education, and I've worked in tech over a couple of decades, most of it in web software in various capacities. And I've also spent a decade in a side quest as a performer on stages and digital in comedy. And I'm talking about how to present things confidently or in some way as a human in online spaces, and talk about some of these things that are coming up and coming at us on the internet right now. So before we talk about how we as human creators can do okay or better or survive in this new landscape, we need to understand the somewhat conflicting ways our brains process perfection and imperfection. So let's start with that feeling of unease, that sense that something is just a little bit off. Now, this isn't something new. In 1970, a robotics professor at the Tokyo Institute of Technology was called Masahiro Mori. And Masahiro Mori wrote an essay about Uncanny Valley. He hypothesized that as a robot looks and acts more human, so as they progress towards humanness, our emotional response goes from neutral to positive, and we feel empathy for that robot. But, however, as it gets almost perfectly human, our response then completely changes, and it plunges from empathy down into a very negative space, like revulsion. And he called that plunge the Uncanny Valley. And I'll link to the original work in the description. Now, for a long time, that was just a theory. right? But it's been studied scientifically. So in a 2018 study, which I'll also link to, it suggests that the Uncanny Valley reaction happens because this robot or avatar violates our brain's predictions. So we see something that looks human. So we expect it to move and behave in a very human way. And when it doesn't, when the gestures are a little bit too smooth or its eyes just don't quite track right, it creates conflict in our brain. And that conflict it feels kind of creepy or messed up when we're looking at or hearing them, because it could be audio too. For example, those 3,000 episodes every week that an AI company plans to generate and put into our ears. If what is being said or how it's being said is uncanny valley, that really close but just off vocally through the cadence and all that kind of thing, it could trigger this kind of response, a conflicted brain. So our brains are wired to be suspicious of near perfection. But contrasting the suspicion of near perfection is that we often trust people more because of their imperfections. And this is explained by a concept in social psychology called the Pratfall Effect. So this was first written about by Elliot Aronson back in 1966. So Aronson and his team studied how a simple mistake affects how likable someone is. And they found that when a very competent person makes a small, honest mistake, like spilling some food or making a mess or spelling something wrong, maybe, their attractiveness to other people actually goes up. But when a person who's perceived as average makes the same mistake, their likability went down. So according to this effect, a so-called superior or higher esteemed person becomes even more attractive after that small and relatable blunder. And now there's some added nuance around social comparisons and cognitive processing in a later study as well, which I'll reference in the show notes so you can go check it out. But an idea to take away for the things that we're making is that for someone generally to be respected, a blemish of some kind can make them seem more human, more approachable, more relatable, which is good for us. So we have the Uncanny Valley, where near perfection feels wrong. We have the Pratfall Effect, where imperfections can potentially build connections. So what if we put these two concepts alongside each other and see what happens when we think about that? Now, I saw something like this online recently. So I follow a creator in the social psychology space as well. So I've followed this person for a while, and I was watching one of their new videos, and it was it was a technically impressive rendition of their likeness. I still had that feeling of something being kind of off. I was like, oh, is this generated? But then near the end of the video, a really big bug in the rendering caused this visual glitch that made it really clear that what I was watching was an AI generated avatar of the creator after all. So my reaction to that was just a bunch of questions, kind of negative ones though, right? If they weren't checking the final video for bugs like this, are they checking the script, right? Is the information that I'm hearing now, and we sort of set up this thing between us, is that even accurate or real? Does the creator even get involved with making this piece of content? Any part of the process? Topic, script, anything? So in this case, the pratfall made me like that person's content less, honestly, which would relate to the social competency thing if we go by the pratfall study. So it feels like it relates to that, in addition to the generated avatar that made me kind of uncanny valley. At any rate, I was left with questions around integrity and trust. It's a little daunting to just think about where these things are headed. And if you work in or deliver educational topics, it's particularly wild to think about what's about to transpire here on the internet, what's real and what's not in almost every category, like scripts and avatars and everything, right? So because we trust people or kind of know what's real or not, or what's put on because of these imperfections, and because we often connect that way through these imperfections, these honest mistakes, like from the beginning that I told about, like the funny laugh or admitting to an error, or sort of stumbling over your own words, or the way you gesture like this or speak, or when you're sloppy. These are all things that our brains have evolved over thousands of years to recognize as really human, being relatable, relating to each other. And that's why the Pratfall Effect is really a moment of relatability that makes us more likable. It depends on context and nuance, but in general, it sort of puts us on the same page and to relate to each other. Like it puts us on the same page for that so we can understand each other, and humans like to be understood. All right, so what happens when the imperfection is made by these AI avatars, like in my example that I gave? Well, it's something different than the Pratfall effect, of course. So before we get to the ways to differentiate ourselves online, we have to understand why we need to build trust online for a human internet. When you make content and put it online, there's kind of a parasocial relationship, whether or not you want that. There's positive and very negative parts of parasocial relationships, potentially, but fundamentally there is an exchange of information being shared from person A to person B. Now, an element of that can be broken when something like the one thing I experienced happens, which is a breaking of trust, kind of manipulation, that kind of thing. Because trust isn't really placed in the words being said or written, and it's not being placed in the digital pixels representing the human, picture or audio or text. Trust is placed in the person, the human saying them, or the human behind them. And if that person is revealed to be a fabrication, and it wasn't disclosed, that's an important point, the audience might be wondering what is real and what is not from that human source. And our human brains look for that predictability to know what is real or not. And trust is built through many forms of cues, through microexpressions and voice and cadence and rhythm and these hand gestures. So when your audience chooses to watch your content, they're like casting a vote to invest their most valuable asset, or at least probably one fairly high on the list, which is their time, because time equals money and everything, whatever. And it's finite. And if you're educating, they might be seeking certain things like building or wanting trust. And as creators, we have a responsibility to take that seriously if we want to build connections for a human internet. And results of polls do suggest that audiences are leaning towards distrusting AI-generated marketing. And this is referred to by some as the AI trust gap. And I'll link to an article from Martech that speaks about this trust gap and some statistics around it in the show notes. And it mentions, among other stats, that only 25% of customers like AI in email marketing. 70% of customers say they can recognize AI copy. 82% of customers want to talk to human agents, even if the AI is more efficient. 60% of customers doubt the AI output, what it's putting out, and 84% of audiences want disclosure about this generated content. So trust. It takes a long time to build, and it can be lost in an instant, in that one glitch. And like if you were listening to music in the late 80s, so this is a real life example, you might remember Milli Vanilli. They built a huge career on some hit songs, they won a Grammy, and then they lost it all overnight when a track of theirs started skipping during a live performance. So this was revealing that they were lip syncing. And, well, this pratfall, if you want to call it one, was a deception, and their careers never recovered. Now, the problem is that trust is fragile, of course. That's the problem here that we're seeing, but it's especially fragile in online spaces because we have such limited cues to begin with. We don't have that in-person thing. that we can sort of read a lot more off of. And I'll link to a paper about deception specifically in computer-mediated communication. And this paper is a little bit old, but it provides some really great insight in this space. With the expansion, growth of generated content, it's really making reality, well, hard to know what's real or not. So I'd say this paper is especially relevant now. And right now, the internet just feels really weird to me. When I see some things, I'm asking questions like, was this a personal story or just a prompt fed to a language model? Did anyone live that experience? Was the advice ever done? Was it tested in the field? Does the creator actually believe in this product that they're recommending? Are they recommending it? Is their endorsement also generated? Do they even know that this video exists, or did they just check a box in some contract to say their likeness could be used for whatever product video for whatever amount of money? I mean, it's so fragile online. And another question is how many humans will care? Or am I just some kind of dinosaur here, not adjusting to the time? Anyways, if you care about this stuff and are finding this video useful, head to my site at humaninternettheory.com. You might like my newsletter too. And you'll be able to get also a free 3-page worksheet that will help you build up your own real digital persona that you're going to base off your own traits so you can educate or inform your audience in a way that you decide. It's about priorities and stuff. Anyways, technology will advance. I'm a dinosaur, but I'm going to come along with it. And these avatars will get better. Maybe even indistinguishable from reality and mostly glitch-free in our not too distant future. But what happens then, right? What is the human reaction when we're surrounded by these flawless, perfect, neat digital beings? Now, I'm going to bet on this. We're going to crave realness and connection more than ever, even online. We're going to be looking for the offline third space experiences, but we're still going to crave realness here. And maybe especially online, and especially from sources where we're used to human connection. Now, maybe some of us might not mind those really big capitalistic corporations using avatars and generated AI because we don't have the same expectations from them because we already don't trust those institutions. However, that Martech article, check it out because they do suggest that maybe we won't accept it from the large corporations either. There's a case study in it. But from the humans that we've connected with individually, the ones we rely on for those genuine sources of advice or real learned lived experiences, I think in those spaces, we're going to crave those pratfalls. And we won't just want them from those superior people, as they call them. We're going to want them from anyone, I think, that's left who is willing to be really genuinely human online. So in this potential future of the dead internet, filled with bots and avatars and such, the question for those of us choosing to build on the human internet is this. What can we focus on to differentiate ourselves? And how can we maintain our social contract? First of all, one, we can embrace more unscripted or semi-unscripted video. Our unique imperfections, the things that make us human, that is going to be our strength in this new internet. So allowing for those spontaneous thoughts off the top of the dome, our natural pauses, and finding your words in the moment is a really good sign of authenticity. And that might be a competitive advantage. So this is really different than our history of marketing that was so focused on these polished, perfect campaigns. Online platforms, especially social media, have really changed this over time. There's more willingness to really engage between brands and creators and educators and stuff in a more genuine and transparent and sort of down-to-earth, not polished way. It makes all of us more approachable. And so if you do use scripts, you can augment them with unscripted elements, or you might move to notes instead. You can add your additional thoughts in real time along with what you're writing. And this can be a learned thing to do, sort of learning to speak off the cuff and in a clean way. You don't tangent or ramble too much. It's something you can learn through improv classes, but you can also practice this with reps, just on your own while you make your videos, iterate and improve over time. One thing you can do is to remember to slow down and gather your thoughts whenever you need to. The pauses are fine. And if you are editing your work afterwards, as so many of us do, you can always cut really long pauses out or cut it down to the right number of them. You can also show some of the behind the scenes footage or add behind the scenes stories specifically into your content. You can plan it out. You can have that stuff with no scripts and other stuff with scripts. If you are a visual artist, you might be doing some of those behind the scenes process, show your process, the things that you make. Now, needing to do this in the first place is kind of a shame. We didn't really need to do it before, but it is the reality that we're heading into. So create processes that help you make all of this easier. You might also want to sort of get rid of some of your lower priority work so you can prioritize the things that do make more of a difference in your space. If you're really into learning how to do any of these things that I've mentioned in detail, let me know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or send me an email if you're listening to the podcast. Let me know what your main challenges are, what you'd like to see more of, and I will prioritize that content. So second, understand that honest mistakes are memorable too. So don't over-edit yourself. Some of those things that you leave in might be what make you stand out and stick in someone's head. Leave a moment where you might break character and laugh or have to correct yourself. All of these little things can be a strength and a way to connect. And making mistakes and not beating yourself up for them afterwards can be difficult if you're prone to, say, listening to a very strong self-critic in your head. So a lot of this is about practice, those reps, and confidence. But more than anything, it's about mindset. And I'll speak more about living with a strong self-critic when you're making things in future episodes, but I'll link to an episode I've already done on this topic through the lens of improv performance in the show notes if you want to check out something related today. And finally, and this is a really important one, disclose the use of generated AI visuals or audio. And so if you're going to be using avatars of yourself or AI generated voiceovers, try to be transparent about it. It might help you in the long run. Like, turn on the toggle in the upload settings on whatever platform. You're often supposed to do it anyways to avoid penalty. Put it in the description. Make a little bumper for the front of your podcast that says what it is before people start. Put it in a burnt-in caption if you're doing a video. So these forms of transparency, when you combine them with like a really good review process to ensure quality and accuracy, is a good way to avoid what might be a loss of trust if anything happens and people find out and it wasn't disclosed or whatever. We don't know how the future is going to go and what people are necessarily going to think. But if people know what they're watching and it's very open, this is what it is, they'll probably be a heck of a lot more forgiving with whatever happens if there's a glitch or something like the one that I saw. Anyways, things are really changing with all of these new features being added into tools at very cheap or free or economical prices. The allure of these perfect AI things, it offers a very tempting path because it's inexpensive and efficient and very polished and kind of, flexible to what you exactly want to say. But it's also a path that does risk some things. It sacrifices some really valuable things that we have with our audience. And that thing, like I've been talking about, is trust. So we're gonna be flooded with these perfect avatars, but our human imperfections, the stumbles and how authentic we are, and these real unscripted moments that we might have, those are a pretty good thing to keep. So don't replace them. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back next week with another episode. And in the meantime, you can watch these videos that are around the screen right now. Cool. Do it. Bye.